That's good.
Welcome everyone to Season 3, Episode 119 of the Premier Pod. I'm your host, Yash Bika, joined by my co-host, Tyler Chan. In this episode, we are in the finale of Season 3, the last one of the season of a very long Premier League and, Champions League, Europa League season. It's been a super long one filled with tons and tons of matches filled in a short time frame. But the day we're recording this, May 26th, is a Wednesday. It was actually the day of the Europa League final. And unfortunately, my team, Manchester United, lost 11-10 on penalties. Yes, you heard that right. 11-10 on penalties. So that meant the goalkeepers actually were the deciding factors, where we saw Villarreal's goalkeeper scoring the winning goal and David De Gea unfortunately missing the last one and sealing United's fate of being runners-up for the Europa League. And it was a tough loss. I'm very, very sad. It was a tough day to record because, man, it was so close to a final and we lost. That was a tough one. It was so tough. We were so close. And we lost. Oh.
It was essentially like a 3-hour final, just watching it from start to end. And it was a little rough for Yesh. I was kind of mentioning to him where he was like, man, is it worse to lose big, to get blown out in a final, or to get so close in a penalty shootout where it gets all the way to the goalkeeper shooting and then losing then? And I was like, definitely the latter. Definitely losing in the penalty shootout, unfortunately, when it was so close. When all you needed to do was just score maybe one or two more penalties than the other team, and then you get the dub. But, I mean, it was really close throughout the entire game. And even, Unai Emery for Villarreal, he played a really tough final where he literally just scored once and it's like, all right, I'm just going to park the bus. Just counterattack the entire game. And he could even counterattack well most of the entire game.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
He scored from one set piece.
Yeah. It was like they had no initiative to go forward, and they literally substituted their two fullbacks in the extra time and put on two new fullbacks. Their club captain and then Alberto Moreno, a former Liverpool player. So Unai Emery went full on defensive 4-4-2, like just basically set up his team in a straight up block, and United struggled. They could not break them down. Marcus Rashford didn't have the best of games. Solskjaer didn't make his first substitution until the 89th minute, and that kind of cost him. But if you look at the bench, there weren't too many impactful players you could really bring off the bench, if we're being totally honest, that have performed well this season. So that probably had a lot to play with it. But it's just it's a tough one to lose because this is the second cup final I've seen United lose since I've started supporting them. The first one was under Mourinho in the FA Cup final of 2017-18. Against Chelsea. But this one hurt a lot because this is under a new regime of Solskjaer, where he's building this new project and you have these new players coming in. You have like all the spirit, ambition. Like it just seems like everything was going in the right direction. And I still think like positive momentum is there, but this final did show that there's still a lot of improvement needing to be done from managers, from players and such. And, it kind of shows that we still need to, invest in the transfer market and bring in some new players if we want to continue improving and also get to a point where we can win one of these trophies and get the job done. And unfortunately, it's just today showed that we were still lacking some characters that we need. And, maybe it's also a sign of like Solskjaer needing to improve a little bit on his managerial side. But that will come because, he's not he's still learning on the job. So it's been a very successful season, I would say, overall, but this one definitely it hurts to end the season in this note of losing the final this way.
Mm-hmm. I was telling Yash overall that Man U, they weren't even supposed to be in a Europa League final.
Yeah,
they were in the Champions League and then fell out the third place in their own group stage, and they ended up in the Europa League by accident.
Mm-hmm.
So they got a little lucky even getting to a final. Granted, it was Europa League, but in the end, it was to no avail. It was just giving Villarreal their first major trophy win in their entire club history.
Mm-hmm.
And Alberto Moreno, of all players, gets a trophy himself. The former Liverpool Samba boy, who was there just to be Coutinho's friend.
I know he looked kind of old. But I guess he's old now because he's
aged.
Yeah, he's aged.
He's an aged man.
He finally got a decent haircut. He stopped with like the little whatever this was called. Like,
he's still bad though. I saw him today just miss some open opportunities, but sure enough, he still has a little bit of that pace. But I will also say too that Man U, they got second place in the Premier League, and they also had Bruno Fernandez do pretty well, but they really did need an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to come off the bench to make an impact, get that winning goal, or maybe just an extra center back, an extra piece of leadership to come in and slot in and kind of get everyone rounded. Because besides Rashford doing the occasional, sauce getting through the Villarreal defense, or Mick Sauce himself, doing something brutal, just like as a brute, just like running through everyone. It wasn't really too much coming out of it. Like Cavani, his goal even was
a scrappy one.
Very scrappy. It was like 50 shots within two seconds. It's like, all right, one of them finally went in.
And I guess that's credit to Villarreal for the way they set up, just setting up in a block and not moving. And it's just unfortunate that the same tactics that I would say won United the Europa League in 2016-17 were the same ones that, ruined their chances of winning this one, where it's just the team went up early and just sat back and defended. Man, it's going to be a big learning moment for, the manager, losing a cup final in this way, but also for the players and such. And I don't know. I'm just curious to see how the players and how the managers bounce back from this, and seeing where United go in the transfer market. Because this final did show that there's still a lot of needs that need to be met, such as bringing in another center back to partner along Maguire, another competent one. Having a defensive midfielder you could trust, but also having a right winger that can create on the right side as well, and not being so overly reliant on Marcus Rashford and Luke Shaw creating everything. So this game definitely did show some of the deficiencies that United have in the squad, and hopefully we can see some investment in the summer for this team. But this one was tough. This one was really tough. But before I get too sad about thinking about the final, because I'll definitely be thinking about this one a lot after we record. Last weekend was actually Championship Sunday, the complete conclusion of the Premier League season, which has been a very wild one because of not Project Restart, but because of the different timelines because of COVID. And essentially the season started, I think, in September, or was it September or late?
Yeah, it was a little later than usual.
Yeah. And all the games were bunched up in like crazy windows. And we saw games being played, not in this, like we didn't see where we normally see, where we see like 7 or 8, 10 a.m. Saturday noon games. Like we saw every game kind of have its own time slot. And that was just due to the scheduling where they had to fit everyone. And it was such a long season. It finally got wrapped up on Championship Sunday. And that meant we finally figured out who finished in the top 4. It ends up finishing as City, United, Liverpool, and Chelsea. I got close to Chelsea not making it. They actually did lose against Aston Villa, which I called, but unfortunately Leicester kind of pooped the bed and were up 2-1 against Tottenham, and then ended up losing somehow 4-2. How? And they let Gareth Bale score twice. And one of the Gareth Bale goals, he literally just ran straight. And that's all he did, was just run right down and scored. So it was unfortunate that Leicester, again, choked up their chances of getting into the champion. Like, you couldn't call it. Like, they literally had from last season the same exact scenarios: win and you're in, and they choked it. And it was a tough one to watch for Leicester City fans. Even though they did win the FA Cup final, it did bring a lot of questions about Brendan Rodgers, whether he's the guy to kind of get them to Champions League. But top 4 is settled. Europa League, obviously Leicester get in there, and West Ham, shout out to them finishing in a Europa League spot. And then the new UEFA Europa Conference League is going to be held by Tottenham. Arsenal had a slim chance. If Tottenham would have lost, Arsenal would have actually gone into that spot. But because Tottenham somehow managed to pull out the win, Tottenham were there. And then the Golden Boot and top assist maker, so the person with leading the assists in the Premier League, actually went to Harry Kane, the 3rd player in Premier League history to ever do that, which is pretty crazy. A pretty crazy stat, to lead the league in goals and assists. And then the Golden Glove went to Ederson. Championship Sunday, even though we didn't see the relegation battle, a very exciting relegation battle or a champion being crowned, we did see all these European spots kind of settle in. And it was a pretty exciting conclusion. I'm not going to lie, during, just seeing like all the drama unfold of like, will Liverpool win? Will Leicester win? Will Chelsea lose? It was definitely pretty fun to kind of keep your eyes on those 3 games, because those were the ones that had a lot of money in stake, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Like watching those 3 teams, like Chelsea, Liverpool, and Leicester, throughout that one Championship Sunday, I was just constantly watching the table. I was like, all right, Leicester scored like a penalty. Like, all right, well, now they're in top 4. And then Liverpool scored. I'm like, all right, thank goodness. All right, we got this. Like, everything is good to go. And then Chelsea conceded a goal. I was like, oh.
I called it.
I was like, it's happening. And then, like, Aston Villa just kept, like, putting their foot on the pedals. Like, we're not losing this. We're making sure Chelsea doesn't get anything from this. And I was like, yes.
I knew it, man. I knew it. That game was going to be tough. And I would say I'm going to give myself credit there. I did call it, but unfortunately I said that Leicester would have beaten Tottenham, and they had Tottenham on the ropes. Man, they just ruined their chances at the end.
Literally, I make fun of Brandon Rodgers every single season for not being able to finish the season. And it happened again. Like, literally on the final day, all they had to do was just win. It was in their hands.
They were 2-1 up in the second half. They just had to hold on, and they couldn't hold on.
And then, of all people, Gareth Bale runs in a straight line, like the most direct. Like, I feel like that tactic worked because no one thought any player would do that. It's like, who runs in a straight line and ends up getting through on goal? It was like Bale, and then it worked. But like Leicester, they literally had it in the bag. All they did was just not lose at that point, or not concede, and then they lose 2-4.
And it didn't help that like Fofana went out injured in the first half, so they lost Johnny Evans in the FA Cup final, and then they lose Wesley Fofana, which was a big loss because Fofana has been like a key defender for them this season. But you know, injuries aside, that's just one of those games where you just got to get stuck in, and like you just got to know as a team that hey, you can't lose. We just cannot lose this game no matter what.
Brendan Rodgers for you. There's always a way where there's disappoint, at least in the Premier League. And also, on top of that, Tottenham, they almost allowed Arsenal to finish above them.
I know, that would be the first time in first time since I think the 2015-16 season. I think that's the last time.
Yeah, it was like 4 years or something. It was insane. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that. But literally, they wanted that Conference League entrance. They did not want Arsenal to get into this Europa Conference League, whatever this new league is. It was a brand new league to us too, at least. I was like, what the heck is this? So, you know, Tottenham keep that streak alive. They snatch it from Arsenal, and now they're going to be playing in the most random places in Eastern Europe. They're going to be playing in like farmlands. Like, there's memes of the teams you face in this Conference League of like, you know those memes of like a soccer field being put onto like a side of a mountain where it's like not even a level ground. It's just like,
that's what like you're going to see there, like incline, a dirt patch or a cow pasture.
Yeah, or like a train going straight through the field. Like, literally it's going to be like games like that. But Tottenham wanted it. They wanted some part of Europe. They wanted Bama, and here they go. They got it.
They got it. Oh man, it was a pretty exciting end to the end of the season, and it was kind of surreal when the Championship Sunday ended with City lifting the Premier League trophy. It's kind of surreal. I was like, man, this has been a very long season, very fun one, I would say, but a very long one because, you know, like we had mentioned, because of COVID, we didn't see multiple 10 a.m. game windows. We saw instead like each team kind of having their own specific window for games. So we oftentimes saw a lot of like Sheffield versus West Brom in the Sunday, like, Saturday, 12:30 hour or whatever. And, you know, throwing no shade there, but, you know, there's only so much you can take of watching Sheffield in like a prime time slot every weekend. So it'll be nice to kind of see the Premier League kind of go back to their normal schedule of multiple 10 a.m. windows, you know, having the Sunday games and things like that. So that way we can, I think it was best put as this, like sometimes too much of a good thing can kind of oversaturate it. And I think that's what we ended up getting this season because of COVID, where we saw the opportunity to watch every single Premier League game with like no interruptions. And we were just like, dang, sometimes there's a reason that some of these games get buried in the 10 a.m. window.
I don't know. I kind of like it though. I kind of like it.
Really?
It's like, because there were some weekends where it's like, man, Chelsea, Arsenal, and then like Man U, Liverpool, like same time slot. I'm like, all right, who did this? Come on now. Like, that happened occasionally. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, all right, well, at least this year, that never happened.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, you get put at 7 a.m. instead, but at least it wasn't at the same time as another game. So that's just my take too. And also just personally did not like when you're watching a game and then they put in like the top right corner of the screen. It's like, oh, this is the score of the other game, by the way, that you're not watching. So I did not want to know that. It's like, okay.
Yeah. I guess that's just a me thing. Tyler's gone the other way, but it'll be nice to see the Premier League kind of go back to a normal schedule next year. But this has been a crazy season, and obviously, as we do for every other season, we have our Premier Pod awards. And if we were in an actual theater, this will be the part where the music starts playing. We throw in our tuxedos or our suits. We're wearing our jerseys, oddly enough, for this one. And we have our water bottles, so no champagne or anything like that to celebrate, just our good old water. But to moving on to the awards, as we typically do for every season, I guess the best one to start it off, or the way we have it, I guess we'll start off with Manager of the Season. And for me and Tyler, we're actually sharing the same manager for this award because we think he's probably been like the manager of the season. And that one will go, drum roll please, to David Moyes, the manager of West Ham, getting his club to finish sixth place in sixth position in the Premier League table. At one point, maybe a month out from the end of the season, they actually had a legitimate chance of finishing in the top four. Unfortunately for them, kind of fumbled the bag a little bit, but given that West Ham were literally fighting a relegation battle last season or a couple seasons ago, they were in a relegation scrap. To them to be put in this position where they're now in a spot where they were challenging for top four and in Europa League is amazing. And David Moyes has should take all the credit for that because he's totally revolutionized the squad, got rid of a lot of bad players, got rid of the Jack Wilsheres and such, built up a really good partnership of Declan Rice and Souček. And then you had the introduction of Messi Lingardinho in the January transfer window that helped a lot. Then you had players like Soufal, just so many players step up during this entire season that have just made this club into this position, getting them back into Europe. And, kudos to David Moyes, because that is a big turnaround for a club that had basically been in relegation scraps ever since they moved to the new London Stadium.
Mm-hmm. This is the first time you've seen those bubbles, and it's actually a good thing. It's not it's just sad bubbles. It's it's actually good this time.
Exactly.
And also, I feel like this is the first time since David Moyes was the Man U manager, ever since he took over for Sir Alex Ferguson, that his career is starting to trend up.
Yeah.
Because
it's been bad.
Yeah, since his move from Everton, which was a decent career, actually. I thought he did a pretty decent job at Everton. And then that's how he even got that Manchester United gig.
Yeah.
Ever since then, it's just been not a steep decline, but
then he went to Spain.
Lost some legitimacy.
He went to Spain, Sociedad, right?
Real Sociedad.
And then he went to Sunderland, got relegated, and left the club after getting relegated. He left the club after getting them relegated. And then he went to West Ham. Or no, he took over West Ham as a caretaker role. And they did not re-sign him. And then they had Pellegrini. Pellegrini was there for a year and a half. Then they brought back David Moyes. And now he's obviously doing good things at West Ham now.
Mm-hmm. So it was big props to David Moyes too. It's he's finally kind of turned a new leaf. And now he's just back to doing a little bit better and actually fighting for a dark horse spot at one point for even, as we joked, winning the title. So,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, but top four being in there, it was kind of like a Sheffield United moment, even from last season, where it's just how are they even there? It's they were fighting relegation last season.
Exactly.
Heck, they changed half their team at the January transfer window when they got rid of Sebastian Haller and then brought in Messi Lingardinho and also Ben Rama. And I was
Sadio Ben Rama, or is it first name Sadio? Yeah, but it's Ben Rama.
But yeah, it's Ben Rama. I'm wow, they actually changed up a lot. They just knew all right, it's not working out. Let's just switch up the front.
Mikel Antonio, the tank, that just the engine that keeps on running.
It's Thomas the Train.
And then he's a baller too. I've always liked Mikel Antonio ever since I first saw him play for West Ham, which was I think 2015-16. I've always been a fan of him because he always runs. He always runs. No matter how bad the West Ham team was, whenever he was in the side, he would always run. And unfortunately, because he always runs, he always ends up getting hamstring injuries. But when he's fit, he's a very, very fun. And I really, really enjoy watching him as a player because he just always runs. Always runs.
Mm-hmm. He plays with a lot of heart. And David Moyes, I feel really brought out the most of this team. He really brought out the potential of all these players because Souček, he came out of nowhere.
Yeah, that guy always scores. He's the best defensive midfielder when it comes to scoring goals I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. And then also he really kept the Declan Rice situation really well managed and controlled, because there's been a lot of rumors of Declan Rice, potentially making a summer transfer window move. And that kind of noise, that kind of distraction can really play on a player that's kind of younger and also has a huge price tag on him. And he's like, well, I'm just playing at West Ham. It's like, I should definitely move. But that kind of noise, that kind of distractions, like he really kept it down and really still brought out the most out of Declan Rice. And even like gave him the captain's man in some games. So like even kind of that kind of transition, maybe that'll help keep Declan at the club. Probably not, but like those kind of moves
it's
things
good
that,
man management.
Yeah, it's good man management. And also it's just, I feel like this is a team that's set up to do something big next season. But I will say there is a slight thing we have to mention, is that there were no fans. And usually the West Ham fans are known to be some of the most friendly fire, like,
they'll
happy,
turn.
if you know what I mean. They'll turn on their own team because it's like kind of more hostile. So who knows how it's going to be next season, but at least for this season, hats off to David Moyes for achieving a top 6 finish, a European finish, being one of the best clubs in London above Tottenham and Arsenal as well.
No, it was a really good season for David Moyes and West Ham, and he definitely deserves manager of the season. There's definitely others that could have been on this short list, like Solskjaer or obviously Pep winning the title, and a couple others, but for sure, I think David Moyes definitely deserves this one. But moving on to our underrated player of the season. It was actually funny. I think when I had this before, I think I had someone else, and I think Tyler had someone else before.
Yeah, I changed it too.
our final selection. But I guess I'll start it off. Oddly enough, we both picked strikers, but obviously 2 different players. For me, I picked Everton's Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I picked him because I think this season he actually showed a little bit of like the quality he has as a goal scorer, and he was actually included in Gareth Southgate's provisional Euro 2020 squad. And I think because of this season, he's actually shown that he can be a viable candidate to bring as a striker for the Euros. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I think in terms of when you watch him play, it's not the silky, very talented in terms of like he's going to do all the tricks and all the skill moves to get past you. He's a very traditional classic striker of he's not afraid to back up in front of a defender. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He's not afraid to rough up some defenders and get his goal. Like he can score the heading goals. He can score with the finishes on his foot. Like he is a scrappy player at heart, but he also has a little bit of quality where he can find a pass. He can link up play and such. And I think this season he did win Premier League Player of the Month during the first month of the season, I believe. But I think a lot of the discussion when we mention Everton always seems to go to like James or his actually striking partner Richarlison, where it's like Richarlison has like all the skills of a he has like all the skills and flair, but he doesn't necessarily have the best finishing. And Calvert-Lewin is the opposite, where he has more of the finishing instincts and more of those natural tendencies as a striker. But I feel like this season, even though he did win Premier League Player of the Month in the first season or the first month of the season, I felt like his name kind of got a little washed out a little bit at the end. And I feel like this Euros and hopefully next season, I think Ancelotti's getting the best out of him, and we're definitely going to be singing his name or be mentioning his name a lot going forward in the Premier League.
I really think that Dominic Calvert-Lewin was a good pick as well, because at the very beginning of the season, he was also top goal scorer.
Yeah, he blew up.
That
was when Everton were top of the league.
Yeah, like when Everton and Aston Villa were top of the league, and it's like, what is happening this season? Like, this is a nightmare for a Liverpool fan. See Everton up there, potentially even talking about finishing above Liverpool. I was like, oh, heck no. And, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he could not be stopped. He was on a streak. I believe there's like a few games, like maybe 10 games in a row.
Where I remember that, where he was scoring like every game. It's crazy.
Yeah, he basically was scoring every game. And like, I was like, what the heck? What got into him? And he didn't really have like, the skills of like a Richarlison, but he had the poacher's mentality. He had that ability to always be at the end of a cross or there to get a tap in. He just had that natural instinct, and that's kind of rare. You don't really see that too often, and it's good to have more competition. And we'll see if Dominic Calvert-Lewin can do something for this England squad in the Euros and can continue this form into next season. But for me, I had my own pick. I had an honorable mention because I did have this player originally. It was Mason Mount, but then I thought about it. He got a team of the season in FIFA 21. I was like, right, that's not really underrated. He definitely got rated. Literally got noticed for that. So I was like, probably not Mason Mount. He's even getting put into mock starting 11s for the England squad for this upcoming summer too. I was like, all right, probably not then. So I switched it instead to Patrick Bamford of Leeds because he scored 17 goals and 8 assists in the Premier League this season.
It's a lot.
And he didn't make the Euros.
That's
he didn't make
crazy.
That England provisional squad. I was like, what
Danny
the heck?
Ings
What do you
made
have
it
to do?
over. Danny
Ings didn't make it either. I thought he was in the provisional. He got left out as well. And then like there's some key players that are left out, but I believe Ings and Bamford were like key players that got left out. But I would say Bamford, he's a player that's kind of been on the radar for like, personally me and Yush, because he was one of those up and coming players that was a youth player for a long time. It was like he was from Chelsea. He was on Middlesbrough for a little bit, but now he ended up on Leeds. And then he was like, oh, you always hear about Patrick Bamford, but he never really goes off. It's just like, oh, he's just has a lot of potential, but never lives up to it. But now this season, he helped bring Leeds into the top 10 kind of conversation within their first time being in the Premier League. Like, this is really cool to see. I was like, oh, Patrick Bamford's actually living up to it. And some of his finishes this season have been lethal. Mm-hmm. Like, he literally would just run. It'd be like Gareth Bale. He just runs straight. Like, doesn't even hesitate. He's like, oh, I'm aiming top right corner from like the opposite side. That left foot, just goes straight in. And like, he has the ability also to help assist too. I was like, wow, this guy's kind of doing a little bit of everything. And that's a solid player for Leeds to have. And hopefully he kind of keeps that Leeds team kind of going, because Rodrigo, we thought he would be the main striker for Leeds. But no, like Patrick Bamford's also been keeping Rodrigo on the bench.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe that Rodrigo miss at the very beginning of the season that Bielsa maybe didn't forget has something to do with it too. But Patrick Bamford, I felt like had at least some argument to maybe get into that provisional squad for the Euros, but he didn't even make it.
Yeah.
So I thought from kind of little things like that, and also just not getting a tots. Wait, no, he did get a tots, but it was like a community.
Yeah.
But so he's kind of like the backup for everything.
Yeah, no, I like that pick because I think Bamford, we saw a lot, even at Middlesbrough, like he couldn't score in the Premier League. His biggest thing was like he could score in the Championship, but when it came to the Premier League, he just couldn't find a way to score. And when he was in Middlesbrough, he was not very good. So it's been pretty, I would say, amazing seeing his development this season in the Premier League, seeing how much of a player, how much more mature he's become and the development he's had in these past couple seasons and working under Bielsa. It's been nice seeing the Patrick Bamford and seeing him score a bunch of goals and his development. So I like that pick. I think that's a pretty solid pick there. But moving on to defender of the season, I'll start it off. I have, I guess, I wouldn't say a very controversial pick. I feel like there is a very obvious answer that a lot of people would typically go for. But for me, I guess to keep it a little bit different, I'm actually going to go for Luke Shaw for Manchester United, the Manchester United left back. I feel like this season in particular has been a revolutionary season for him, because going into this season, a lot of United fans, even myself, were calling on a replacement left back or getting a new starting left back. And that's why you saw United targeting Sergio Reguilon. That deal didn't work out. And then finally getting Alex Telles. And I remember when we signed him, I was like, dude, this guy's going to be it. He's our new left back. And oddly enough, when that happened, we saw Luke Shaw basically increase or get better. His performances started to get really better, and he started to become a lot more assured of himself defensively. He started to become much more of a better attacker going forward, and he just had a very good balance between him. And we saw those couple games where he was out that United sorely missed him on the left side as being that key defender, and it just kind of showed the drop off from Shaw to Telles. And I was just like, man, this is amazing what competition can do out of someone, and how much, what competition can bring out of someone and making them better. And I think my favorite moment this season of Luke Shaw was when he scored and just literally ran down the line in the Manchester City, like the Manchester Derby, and scored against City. And it was like Luke Shaw scoring, that's so unheard of. And for me, he has to be defender of the season, because I think he's just been such a solid left back, and he's just been such a solid player for United that he just has to be there, because he's just had an outstanding season.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely say Luke Shaw is part of the starting 11 for Premier League team of the season. Mm-hmm. Like, he's definitely had a rejuvenating kind of season as well, from going from the big kid on the block, the next big thing, to fat Luke Shaw, to now team of the season Luke Shaw, just one of the best left backs, if not the best left back in the Premier League this season. And for Alex Telles as well, I was thinking he was one of the best rated left backs going into Manchester United. I was like, oh wow, he's literally going to take over for Luke Shaw. But then Luke Shaw came out of nowhere and kind of showed him up. And maybe it had to do a little bit with Alex Telles not being as good as we thought. Maybe it was a little bit of that, but no, I think Luke Shaw definitely earned it. And that same goal you're talking about against Manchester City, I saw that and I was like, Luke Shaw scores? I didn't know that. I was like, wow. So, credit to Luke Shaw for having a rejuvenating season. Like that's a big theme going on so far. We got David Moyes rejuvenating, Patrick Bamford rejuvenating,
Luke Shaw.
Now Luke Shaw. But for me, my pick for my defender of the season is probably the more bandwagon pick. It's the more common one, and it is Ruben Diaz, the center back for Manchester City. And I have to say straight up, he proved me wrong. I called him out in the first episode.
We both did.
Yeah, we're like, who's this man? I thought he was older.
Yeah.
Like I just hear his name all the time. He's like an 81 rated center back in FIFA. Like for the longest time. It's like, all right, like what's so special about him? Like on paper, you can't really tell. It was just not until you saw him on the pitch. He was very commanding. He was one of those players that Yush constantly talks about that Manchester United needs. And also that you see in Van Dijk for Liverpool, where he is a very, commanding leader. He gets everyone aligned. He took Laporte and put him on the bench. That's insane in itself. He just started
turned John Stones into the almost, I wouldn't say world class, but literally made his potential go back up again. Like he literally turned John Stones into a really good defender again.
Like he turned that Manchester City defense that cost basically over 200 million pounds into a defense that looks like it costs over 200 million pounds and not one that was just overpaid.
Yeah.
Like this was rejuvenating. This was just completely revamping, where it's just like it really brought out the potentials of everyone else. And they had 15 clean sheets when he played, which is also insane. But Ruben Diaz, like it really not too much argument for that. Like he's literally he's like a culture changer.
Oh yeah.
And that's something you don't really see too much on paper, but at least for this season, the stats also kind of correlated with how he played and what he brought to that Manchester City team. And it scares me because for Liverpool, with Van Dijk and Joe Gomez, like that starting four in the back, usually you would see kind of similar numbers, but in the City, they kind of struggled without Company being in that team. But now with Ruben Diaz being someone who's younger than me, being a part of that team now.
And they can spend another 300 mil on like a back line.
Exactly. And like with Manchester City's unlimited war chest of a bank account, it's like, all right, well, now I'm really worried because that was one of their Achilles heels for the longest time. Defense. It's just, can we fix that defense? And now I feel like they finally did with just this one player.
Yeah.
Ruben Diaz.
Yeah, so I can't argue with that pick. Like Tyler said, he's been such a good defender that you to leave him out of this award would be audacious. So he definitely was deserving of this accolade. But moving on to, I guess, a more somber one, his most disappointing signing of the season, essentially biggest flop of the season. And for me, a common theme, keep picking a bunch of Manchester United players. Trust me, I'm not doing that on purpose, but for me, it has to be Donnie Van Der Beek. This one was, when the signing did happen in the summer, I was like, dude, I'm so gassed. Like, this is going to be amazing. Like, the quality he can add with Pogba and Bruno in the midfield would be amazing. His goal scoring ability, his creativity, he kind of has it all. He's a very smart technical player for Ajax. And I was really looking forward to him kind of kicking on and being a very good backup or being a very good like super sub almost off the bench. But this season, he has just struggled to really acclimate himself into the Premier League. It could be one of those, first season into the Premiership and, you're kind of, I would say, struggling to kind of acclimate yourself and get in, get involved. But yeah, it just seemed that at one time Solskjaer kind of lost a little faith in him. And towards the end of the season, whenever he did play, his performances kind of dwindled. He wasn't very confident on the ball. He was definitely looking for more of the safer passes instead of taking more of the riskier options, and we just didn't really see the full version of Donnie Van Der Beek that we saw at Ajax. And I'm hoping that next season, he can kind of show off and showcase some of the quality in the player that he was. But this season, for the price tag we paid on him, he just did not live up to the expectations and did not perform the way that a lot of United fans would have hoped he would have performed, given his kind of stature in the game, being a young and up and coming player. So for me, he has to be disappointing signing of the season for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing about Donnie Van Der Beek. Expectations. That's kind of what really brought him down. But also, it was kind of rough for Manchester United because they also brought in Bruno Fernandez. They also had, Dan James up there. It's like he was coming into a position, and also, like Greenwood, basically all the attackers. Like that's basically where he ideally go, and not that position of McSauce, McFred, that kind of position. He doesn't want to play too defensive. So it was kind of already going into a congested kind of starting 11 to even fight for in the first place. And who knows, even like Juan Mata, you didn't even hear about him. It's just, So Donnie Van Der Beek, he was kind of fighting an uphill battle the whole season. So and that was one of the signings too. I was like, man, I really wish Liverpool got him because, Donnie Van Der Beek, he just had that kind of instinct in him too. He's just like right place, right time. Yeah. And that's kind of his key attribute about him.
Yeah.
But for me, my most disappointing signing of the season is not really has to do with like expectations. Well, it kind of has to do a little bit, but it also has to do with just my affinity towards a certain player that I spoke highly of last season.
Two seasons.
Like two seasons in a row. Like I basically have been talking about him since like season 1 of the podcast, but he just pooped the bed when he finally made his big move this summer or last summer, and it was Ryan Brewster.
Yeah.
Ryan Brewster made his big money move, £30 million to Sheffield United to help a team that could barely score last season get at least some goals, get some assists on the books to help the defense out, because their defense was really good. It was very solid. Literally was the reasons why they were in that top half of the table. Yeah. They would win a lot of games 1-0, and they definitely knew they could not do that again this season. It was not something they can just whip out and be like, all right, we're just going to be the 1-0 team every single season. Because, one injury happens to that back line, which did happen. They're screwed. And they really needed Ryan Brewster to carry. And Ryan Brewster, he had a lot of potential as a Liverpool player in the academy. He was one of the top goal scorers, one of the most highly talked about prospects from Jurgen Klopp. But maybe that was all marketing, because this season he had 27 appearances for Sheffield United, had 0 goals and 0 assists.
That's bad.
And Sheffield United also gets relegated dead last with only 20 goals scored. Like a team that needed goals, he could not help them at all. And eventually got benched and wouldn't even get subbed on to play.
Yeah.
Like that is insane. Like for a player to not even get as much impact as he did for being a big money signing, one of their most expensive signings, if not the most expensive signing of their club history.
Yeah, it's rough.
He couldn't do it.
That's brutal.
That was like a double stab for me, because I'm like, man, I really like this kid.
I felt like his his like Liverpool days were numbered when I think it was the Community Shield where he missed the penalty. It was the Community Shield, I think, where he like legit missed a penalty for Liverpool, and I think Klopp in his face was just like, yeah, this guy's gonzo, and he left, and he just didn't perform, and now Sheffield are in a position where like, dang, they just spent this big cash on this player, and now we have to keep him at this point.
Because Sheffield, they don't have that much money. Like they put all their eggs, or not all of them, but like a huge chunk of them
in this one
into this Ryan Brewster basket, and it was all rotten. Maybe they can rejuvenate some of it. They can, regenerate some of that next season, because they're going to be in the championship, a little lesser competition. Maybe Ryan Brewster can find his new boots, become the next Josh Maja. But for now, it's just looking like one of the biggest busts of all time. Yeah, 0 goals, 0 assists. Come on, mate.
Yeah,
mate. What the heck?
It was not a good look for Ryan Brewster, and I guess that kind of leads it to, I guess, our next award, most toasted player of the season, which I think last season ended up going to Kepa or David Luiz. I think Kepa got it last season. But this season, oddly enough, is going to another Chelsea player. And Tyler, I guess I'll let you take the reins at this one.
So yes, our classic phrase, toasted, our player that we roast the most to the point that they're toast. That kind of rhyme. You catch me out here dropping these rhymes, but our most toasted player of the season that we naturally roasted, that we kind of thought about throughout the whole season, we picked was Teemo Werner. Yeah. Because Teemo Werner also kind of succumbed to the issue of expectations. He came in as being one of the highest rated, strikers in Europe and in the world even, where it's like, all right, wherever team he goes into, he's going to bring goals. But we saw in at least the first half of the season, he could barely score. Like he would get so many chances, but couldn't finish any of them. And it got to the point where you'd be playing FIFA. It's like, man, my player just missed. He should have just pulled a Werner. He took 9 shots and missed all 9.
The man was,
or like,
the man has been
offsides.
offsides. Like literally, anytime he plays, he's just offsides. This is, you can count on him being offsides.
Literally, if it really felt like a winger trying to play striker for most of the season. And it was like, man, Werner, you got this huge price tag. You got to do better than that.
Yeah, and he just runs in a straight line.
He just runs in a straight line. And I kind of feel like we mentioned at the very beginning of the season in one of our earlier episodes where it's like, man, all the tape on him kind of shows that he just kind of runs in a straight line for RB Leipzig. And then he just gets a lot of chances.
Yeah.
Doesn't finish all of them, but he's not the most clinical. But I mean, in the Premier League, you kind of have to be clinical because you don't get that many chances. And sure enough, that exactly is what happened. Like he just got so many chances, but then missed a ton. And Chelsea ended up having to rotate the front where it's like, all right, we're going to put Kai up there. We're going to put Pulisic up there. We're going to put Mason Mount up there sometimes. He's not even a striker.
and then Werner like kind of shifts off to the wings sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like he kind of found more of his footing at the end of the season. He started getting more assists. He started being a little bit more confident, getting some clutch goals here and there. But he should have been in the contention for top goal scorer. He should have been in that same realm of like at least Patrick Bamford, but he didn't even live up to that. And he would just miss some of the most open goals. It was like Fernando Torres level at Chelsea kind of misses. I was like, what the heck is happening? Like he could score.
I guess the strikers at Chelsea just are cursed if you're not Drogba, unless you're Drogba.
Exactly. I'm just like, man, Werner. Even Chelsea fans are like, man, at least he has, like this other player is better finishing than Werner or something like that. Like literally it became a phrase. It's like, at least you don't have finishing like Werner. And that's where it felt like the toast comes out. When you just get roasted enough, it's like, all right, you're the most toasted of the bunch. Exactly. And lucky for Kepa, he didn't even play that much this season. So he would have got twice in a row.
Yeah.
But there you go. Another Chelsea player gets most toasted player of the season. Teemo Werner. I guess
moral of the story, just don't sign for Chelsea and you have a good chance of not being toasted player of the season.
We like to say that. We told Pulisic, don't do it. But here we are.
You ended up going.
We should have had toast for this season, but maybe next season.
Burnt toast.
Some burnt toast.
Really black burnt toast. But unfortunately, we don't. I guess fortunately for our mouths too, we don't have to eat burnt toast. But I guess going also onto the theme of disappointment, now we're moving on to most disappointing team of the season. And for me, this one, I am going to put this one out there. Tottenham Hotspur are the most they are the most disappointing team of the season, and I'll tell you why. Because going into the season, they had the second season Mourinho, they had Kane, they had Son, they added Højbjerg in the summer transfer window. They signed Doherty also from Wolves. Ndombele, they saw a revolution. Ndombele coming in. They signed Gareth Bale on loan. The return of Bale, the big guy, like the guy that created, that brought Spurs so many great memories. Gareth Bale was back. They signed Sergio Reguilon. Like going into the season, everything pointed to Tottenham being legitimate title contenders or getting really close to challenging for a title, but not only a title, but winning a trophy. Like it just seemed like they were going to win either Europa League, FA Cup, the Carabao Cup. They're going to win something. Excuse me, I'm knocked over the mic. That's how passionate I am about this. But literally everything they had, they even signed Joe Hart as a free agent to kind of add some more leadership in the back. And I know Hugo Lloris is their main goalkeeper, but Joe Hart was supposed to add that leadership and that, he's been there. He's done that. He knows how to win titles. But my gosh, what ended up happening? Mourinho gets sacked in literally a week before the Carabao Cup final. They lose the Carabao Cup final. They get knocked out of the Europa League by a team whose manager was in prison literally last week before their match. They get knocked out by that team. Gareth Bale, if you look at his season-ending stats, pretty decent, but overall didn't really provide that extra oomph. Dele Alli was missing for most of the season. Matt Doherty didn't end up being like that big of an impact. They ended up playing Serge Aurier both more often than not. And Ndombele had a good season, but the biggest and probably the most soul-crushing for all Tottenham fans is they left the season without a trophy, and now they go into next season potentially almost certainly that they're going to be without Harry Kane. And that was probably the biggest blow to them. And I think that's why they're the most disappointing team of the season, because not only did they not get the second year Jose Mourinho bounce, they lost him. They lost a cup final that they've been so desperately looking for in terms of winning a cup. And to pile it on top of that, Harry Kane, their biggest and best player, wants to leave the club to go win trophies and compete in the major European competitions. And to me, that is why Tottenham are the disappointing team of the season. They've just been a disastrous season for all Spurs fans.
It's a really good argument.
Yeah.
Literally, I was like, man, maybe I should switch my answer. But maybe I didn't even think about that because my standards for Tottenham are just so low. I just know they're going to disappoint. And then even my friends that are Tottenham fans, they're still sad. I'm just like, man, that's just how it is. It's just you're a Tottenham fan. But I mean, even at Christmas time, they were still in contention for the title. And then everything just poop hit the fan. And then it just went straight downhill. And sure enough, Tottenham, another disappointing season as per usual. But that's kind of why I didn't really pick them. I was just like, I know they're having one of the worst seasons of all time, but also they're Tottenham. Just who they are. But my pick is more kind of just from comparing this season to last season. It's a lot more simple than as just had a lot of evidence. Mine was not really too much evidence. It was just very much like, wow, what a drop off. And that was Sheffield United.
Yeah.
Sheffield United. Terrible team. They literally look like a completely different team this season, to the point where Chris Wilder, the manager of the past 5 years, who brought him up from League One to the Championship to the Premier League to almost getting into European competitions in the Premier League last season, to getting dead last. They didn't get a win for the longest time. They kind of clutched some at the very end of the season to make it not look like they had that Derby County season where they finished with 11 points. But Sheffield United finished with 23.
It was so bad. It is really bad. And to me, I was just genuinely shocked because I thought this season, because they signed Ethan Ampadu on loan, who's a very highly rated center back, a Welsh center back. They signed him on loan. They obviously made the big signing of Ryan Brewster. I thought that they were like, okay, I don't think they were going to achieve what they did last season, but I thought, okay, at least they're going to probably be in the Premier League. But my gosh, this season has been horrible. Really bad. Mm-hmm. Very, very bad season.
They also signed Aaron Ramsdale, who I still feel like it was not a very good signing. Yeah. But he apparently made it to the provisional squad of the Euros. And he's probably third string, fourth string, but third string, fourth string keeper. I mean, even things like that. I was like, man, they're kind of making some signings that, besides Ryan Brewster, which I was like, man, this is not really signings that will help keep them in the Premier League. Yeah. And losing Dean Henderson, I didn't think would be that huge, but it kind of really showed how much Dean Henderson carried that team.
Yeah.
I was like, holy cow, because this team is completely different. They dropped 12 places basically.
Exactly.
From last season. And now they're in a dumpster fire. They have no idea what direction the team's going to take. They don't know if they're going to rebuild. They don't know if they're going to continue on with as many players as it could. Who's going to leave the team to try to go to other Premier League teams? Relegation is never easy, but for right now, Sheffield, I don't even know if they're going to be able to fight back to try to get into the Premier League next season.
Yeah.
They're going to be in a Sunderland situation where it's like, man, I don't know how they're going to do. And they had a pretty decent fan base as well. It's kind of I don't think it's Sunderland level, but it's definitely one of the more popular, bigger clubs that, they finally made it back in the Premier League and boom, second season, they go straight down. And it wasn't even a question. It's just win. So Sheffield United, a big shock, a big surprise. I think a lot of people were anticipating they'd stay in the Premier League for at least a decent amount of time, but it turns really quickly, and that's Sheffield United for you.
Yeah.
Life
comes at you fast. Life comes at you fast. So that, a somber note of that disappointing team of the season. But I guess moving on to more happier awards to congratulate some players. We have the best player outside the top six club award that we typically give out every season. And for me, the two players we picked are both from the same club, oddly enough. But for me, I'm picking goalkeeper Emi Martinez for Aston Villa. He came in to Aston Villa after leaving Arsenal. He was an outstanding goalkeeper for Arsenal during Project Restart once Bernd Leno went out injured, and he basically carried on that same form. And he was one of the main reasons Aston Villa have had such a great season, because he's come up with clutch saves. He's just been an overall great goalkeeper. And I think if you're looking for anyone else for that terms of just pure consistency and just adding just straight up solid performances, Emi Martinez for me has been for me the go-to guy and the best player outside the typical top 6 clubs.
I was surprised how well Emi Martinez did.
Yeah.
Because when he was at his last few games at Arsenal, he did really well there. And we're just thinking, it's like, oh, okay, maybe just in some good form.
He's actually good.
And then it's like, yeah, he's actually good. Like, I really hope that he can really help Argentina, because he's an Argentinian goalkeeper, and maybe he can get selected for that squad and help Messi finally maybe win something, because they're always missing a keeper, I feel like, and defenders. But, you know, I really think he is a big game changer for Aston Villa too, because that'll help keep them in the Premier League for sure, because before they had like the thumb, Brad Guzan, for the longest time.
And then they had Pepe Reina,
like a
throwback. He's coming in last season as like an auxiliary goalkeeper to help save
They're
them.
always struggling, but now with Emi Martinez, it gives a little bit more of a commanding presence in the back. Something I feel like a player that could make a big move to a bigger club, but you know, he's finding his feet at Aston Villa. But as you just mentioned, my player for best player outside the top 6. Originally, I was going to pick Thomas Suchek, but then I was like, wait, he's top 6 now. That's kind of weird. But it would be, now my pick is also in Aston Villa. It is Jack Grealish. Jack Grealish, although he was injured for a third of the season, the team completely changed when he got injured from when he played. So at the very beginning of the season, when he did play, they were fighting for the top 4 spots.
Yeah,
they were in that competition where it's like, what the heck? How are they up here with Everton? And they just kept going. And they had a lot of impact and a lot of leadership from Jack Grealish, because he really brought up everyone else around him. It was kind of like a Ruben Diaz situation, except if you put him in the front. Yeah. And this player, he would attract so much attention that he would make it a lot easier for all the other players around him too.
A lot.
Yeah, he gets hacked a lot. It's kind of like Eden Hazard, where it's just like, man, how many fouls can one man get?
He also wears like those really not the long socks. So like his like
the really short ones.
Yeah, his shin is always just like, or like his whole calf and stuff is always exposed. I'm like, man, he's really tough to be able to take that damage each week.
He's the equivalent of like sagging in Atlanta. Your pants is just like this low cut socks. But that's Jack Grealish for you. He got 6 goals, 12 assists, and 26 appearances. Literally, he missed 12 games, and in of those 12 games, Aston Villa dropped out of the top European competition spots into, you know, still the top half of the table, but still just wasn't in that competition anymore. Yeah. And that conversation anymore. So I feel like having Jack Grealish really did change the team, and it really got a lot of eyes from a lot of other teams, like in like Arsenal. It's like, does he go to a new club? Does he stay on his boyhood club, Aston Villa? Like, what does he do? Like, these kind of conversations don't get spoken of like as highly if it's just some random, you know, good player. This is like a key player that I think will also make a huge impact for the England squad. He's grown a lot this season as well. There's been a lot of just
for me, he's definitely because I know him and James Maddison, they're similar players, but I think Jack Grealish has shown that I think for me personally, I think he's a better player than James Maddison in terms of pure consistency and such.
And I feel like compared to James Maddison too, Jack Grealish took like a huge step up. Yeah. To the point where it's just like, wow, he's not even like a huge prospect that's really talented. It's just like he's actually a really talented player. Yeah.
And he's doing this for like with a team that doesn't have, you know, likes of Vardy, Iheanacho, Tielemans, you know, like he's the main guy. He's the guy that has to do everything.
Then it has to start. It's not someone who can, you know, get subbed on in the 60th minute. like Madison. So I think this kind of player alone, Jack Grealish, top player outside the top 6 for me.
I like the pick. He's been very good, and you know, shout out to him because you know, even though Aston Villa is his boyhood club, he had a huge decision to make last summer when his contract was running up, and I know United were very, very interested in him, and he decided to commit his future to Villa. And obviously, you know, he can still move, but you know, kudos to him for staying at his boyhood club and also performing at a high level and even jacking up his price even more. So, you know, jacking up his price like Jack Grealish does. So great player, very, very good player. And moving on to our next award, surprise team of the season. I'm sticking with a Leeds player, or I guess I kind of ruined it right there. Leeds United are my surprise team of the season. I think for them, as we saw this season, the 3 clubs that got promoted into the Premier League from the Championship, West Brom and Fulham, going straight back down, but Leeds took the Premier League by storm, and I was very, very impressed with them because Marcelo Bielsa, his style of basically everyone man marking, everyone has a person they have to mark, and it's just a straight up 11v11 man mark, high press, high intensity attack, basically 24/7. And they got blown out in a couple games. They lost a couple big, 3-4 games, 4-3 games, 3-2 games. But he kept his style intact. He added some quality players, in the summer transfer window. But they definitely made an impact in the Premier League. And they took the league by storm. And they were able to stay up and do decently well, like stay comfortably up in the Premier League. So for me, I think Bielsa and I think Leeds United have done a fantastic job. So for me, they are surprised because I knew they were going to be a good watch, but I just didn't think that I knew they were going to stay up, but I didn't know they could take the league by storm in this fashion. So for me, they definitely have to be my surprise team of the season.
Mm-hmm. It's very much like a Wolverhampton kind of level situation, which is like, wow, they came out of nowhere.
Exactly.
But we'll see how long they can make that last. Because right now, Santo, the manager of Wolves, has announced he's leaving at the end of the season. So I don't know how much Wolves can continue that kind of stint. But, mini Portugal, we'll see how they do. But for me, my pick for surprise team of the season is West Ham. It's a team we already kind of mentioned and kind of, pranced about and gave flowers to, things like that. But, once again, just to reiterate, West Ham, they're a team that are in the relegation zone battle last season. And then they're a team that are very much like Everton, just like a bunch of players that are kind of outcasted from other teams that had a lot of potential. They just never lived up to it. And, David Moyes really brought out the most of all these players, and even brought out some from the grave, like Jesse Lingard. And it was like, you know what? We're going to make something happen. We're going to get into European competition. And they actually did it. Yeah. I don't even know if that was their goal. Like, we got sad when we found out they weren't going to be in the Champions League. And it was like, that wasn't even in the conversation of goal. This is like a stretch goal. If it was like a dream for them to even make it into a European competition, they would take Europa League all day. Yeah. But for them to even be fighting for Champions League, that was insane in itself. Yeah. So, I mean, not to make this a whole episode on the West Ham, but, that's my pick for surprise team of the season. I was potentially going to pick Sheffield, just because they're surprised for the wrong reasons. But let's just keep it happy. We'll make it West Ham.
Positive. I like that. I like that pick. I think you could have gone. There was a couple of teams that you could have picked, but I think West Ham are a solid choice for this award. And moving on to, I guess, a fun one, goal of the season. We had some, I would say, a couple of special goals during this season. I think every Premier League season, there's always a couple that always jump out to you. And I'll lead it off here. I think there was a couple good ones that we could have picked, but for me, when I was looking back at it, I know the Alisson goal has a lot of, it's just an amazing moment because it's a goalkeeper scoring in literally stoppage time, the last kick of the game, winning it to help secure Liverpool's chances of finishing in the top four, which they eventually did. But for me, in terms of just all out crazy goal of the season, I have to pick Eric Lamella's Rabona against Arsenal in the North London derby. That goal was incredible. And I remember we literally spent, I think, a solid 10 or 12 minutes talking about the goal when it happened. And to me, the audacity to pull it off in that moment, as Tyler mentioned, there's only a select few players that even have the kind of I would say, cojones to even pull that off. Lamella is definitely in that ilk of just players that just doesn't care and will go for it. He pulled it off. It was a very clean struck Rabona that literally went through the legs of every player, and Bert Leno had no chance to basically save it. So for me, it has to be the Rabona. It was just seeing that and seeing someone pull that off in that fashion was amazing. Mm-hmm. We'll
probably never see something like that for a while, maybe a few decades, honestly. Like in this kind of situation, unfortunately, it was to no avail. Eric Lamella did get sent off in the same game. I don't think they won that game either.
Yeah, no, they lost that game as well.
Those were nothing. But, that kind of crazy goal is very once in a blue moon. Like no one, like even a few seasons ago, you remember there was Mkhitaryan scoring a scorpion kick, and then a week after, Giroud scoring a scorpion kick. But this season, no scorpion kicks.
Yeah. So, Townsend, like freaking rocket, or Townsend, like incredible volley.
These are very, very rare goals to see. And like I'll say an honorary pick real quick is Fernan Torres, his back heel.
Oh yeah, that like pseudo scorpion, that crazy like karate style kick flick or something like that. Yeah,
against Newcastle, it was kind of like Ibra-esque, but it just came out of nowhere. It was like a no look back heel mid-air kind of one touch flick over Dubravka to score. And I was like, what the heck was that? Yeah, that was probably one of the hardest awards to really give because we don't have visuals. So we're just kind of like telling you audibly what these goals were like. But in terms of difficulty, I was like, that literally can't just, that's a goal that you can't do regularly. That's something like just, it's like one in 1,000. Unless you're Fernandez Torres, maybe it's like a little more frequent. But I would say my pick though for goal of the season, Yash already mentioned, it might be a little bit of Liverpool fan bias, but I will say it is Alisson Becker's header win against West Brom, just because it was the 94th minute in the 4th minute of added time. It was literally the last kick of the game. And it was literally like roll the dice. It was like Alisson had to score to keep Liverpool's top 4 chances alive. He had to do it. And sure enough, he gets the perfect header and saves Liverpool's season. Like that in itself, not only statistically for the table, saved their season, but also for morale overall. It really brought out everyone. It's like, all right, we actually have a chance of getting this, of getting top 4 and just keeping the streak alive. Because ultimately Liverpool went on like a 5-game winning streak to end the season and won out and actually got 3rd place in the Premier League, which is still insane to even say. But that kind of opportunity is, and that kind of moment is something I actually probably won't ever forget. Because like even when we're like 50 years from now, it'd be like, remember that one time the goalie scored the game winner
crazy
and saved their season? Like that's so rare. Like that's something that you'll just kind of think about forever. It's just in everyone's memories. Like, man, I remember that header from Alisson Becker, and that is why that is my goal of the season.
I like it. I think it's a really good pick because it was just like that moment in itself, like with everything, when you think about it, it just adds to it. And like Tyler said, that's one of those, well, you know, in a couple of years, you'll just kind of remember, it's like, yeah, that goal was insane. I remember where I was when that happened. So it was a really great goal. And I think it's a worthy pick for goal of the season. So moving on to the next award, we have player to watch next season. And same player that I picked for most disappointing signing of the season, I'm picking him for this one, is Donnie Van Der Beek. I think next season, given what United will spend in the summer transfer window, which I think they'll spend a decent amount, I think we'll see a really, really revolutionized and more motivated Donnie Van Der Beek. I think he'll be more comfortable being it his second season in England, second season working under Solskjaer. I think Solskjaer will want to get the best out of him. So I think we're going to see next season a very impactful and a very just a very impactful Donnie Van Der Beek that will show off a lot of what he could do, what he was doing at Ajax, and show it off at Old Trafford in Manchester United colors. So for me, it has to be Donnie Van Der Beek.
Man, you're already writing the comeback story for Donnie Van Der Beek already. The red carpet's already out. Everything's laid up. Now it's just Van Der Beek's got to do it.
Yeah.
And I have faith in him too. I really like him. So hopefully he lives up and gets his opportunities at least. But for me, my pick for player to watch of next season, and I feel like this is the award that, you know, Yash and I, whenever we do pick, it's typically a pretty high chance to like they do well. Like
season 1, I remember I picked Diego Jota, and like this dude is literally now at Liverpool. So
and then I picked Harvey Barnes. He's doing all right, at Leicester. Yeah. But I just went off on a tangent. But anyways, player to watch for next season. For my pick, it kind of leads to why I kind of mentioned that, but it's Joe Willock, the Arsenal loanee that was at Newcastle this later half of the season, because he's a youth player. He's a player that had a lot of potential for that team, that Arsenal squad, but just couldn't really get that starting 11, that kind of impact that, you know, an Emil Smith-Rowe is having, a Martinelli's having, I guess even an Odegaard is having.
Yeah, or Saka.
Saka especially. So he didn't really have that opportunity to really get that impact. So he went to Newcastle, a team that's just fighting relegation. Basically, we were on track to get relegated until Fulham pooped the bed. Yeah. But Joe Willock, he has a clutch gene that I haven't seen in many other players, where you sub him on and maybe like 10 minutes left, 30 minutes left. I feel like he always scores.
Yeah.
I feel like he always finds a way to ruin the other team's dreams, where even against Liverpool, he scored. I was like, what the heck? Joe Willock.
The stat that was insane was he scored in 7 consecutive Premier League games, but in his 6th Premier League game where he scored it 6 times in a row, he's literally the youngest Premier League player ever to score in 6 consecutive Premier League games. And he made it 7 on Championship Sunday when he scored again. So he just finds a way. He has a knack for just getting the ball in the back of the net, which is important for Arsenal because they need goal scorers and creators.
He's not even like a striker or like a center attacking mid. He's a straight up CM. He's a straight central midfielder. And yeah, he can play more attacking, but I feel like he's slightly more box to box. But he has that knack to be in the right spot at the right time, kind of like Van Der Beek. Yeah. But sure enough, he's actually finishing his chances and getting more opportunities. So maybe Van Der Beek might go to Newcastle. I don't know. But Joe Willock, we got a little taste of him this season at Newcastle, and I'm very interested to see how he does, because if Arsenal have him and he does the same thing off the bench, but instead starting, that's pretty promising. Yeah, I feel like that's something.
They don't have Ceballos anymore, too. He could take over that Ceballos role.
Just take over the Ceballos spot. Yeah, he's not as creative, but I mean, someone like this, that's an intangible that you can't really find in many other players. Yeah. The clutch gene, the Damian Lillard kind of gene where you can just score from when you need him most. So I feel like Joe Willock is one to look out for next season.
Yeah, I was really jealous when you had that, because I was like, dang, that's a really good pick. I wish I had that one. I also think that Joe Willock will be a really, really good player for Arsenal next season. I'm pretty sure they're going to keep him. They'd be foolish not to. I think he'll play a really big role for the Gunners next season, and hopefully getting them back to maybe challenging for top 4 again, or getting back into European competition and such. So he's definitely a player that I think is well worth watching as well. But finally, our final reward, the biggest one of them all, is the Premier Pod Player of the Season award. And me and Tyler are sharing the same player. We're giving it to the same player for this one to, I guess, wrap it up in an overall player. Is Bruno Fernandez, Manchester United midfielder. Bruno. I think, there's a couple other players that could have gotten this award, but for me, if I'm speaking as a United fan, his impact in terms of the amount of goals he scored this season, and the assists and the creativity and the imagination and his leadership, and the fact that he's the type of player that can bring everyone else's playing level up. Literally, you can look at the stat sheet. That is incredible. But the intangibles that he brings that is not on the stat sheet can't go unnoticed. He is just a wonderful player, and he has just been the signing of the season. Even when we signed him in January of last season, he's just been such an impactful player and such a good player for United. And it's just hard to imagine this United team without him, because without him, they definitely would be missing a lot of the creativity, a lot of the goal scoring, everything that Bruno brings that we kind of take for granted now because we see him every week. This team is just nothing. It's not the same without him. And he's just been a fantastic player. And I can't imagine giving this award to anyone else. He's just been so impactful for United that, for me, he just has to be player of the season.
Mm-hmm. And he's unanimously a player that every Manchester United player and fan likes, because it kind of really stuck out to me when I was on Twitter once, and then I saw a video of his daughter like holding onto his leg, and he's like, I gotta go to work, I gotta go play, and the daughter's like, no, don't leave. And then the first comment I saw on that post was like, hey girl, let him go, we need him. We need to freaking win, without him we suck. So literally, like, those kind of players, those kind of, like, that player in itself doesn't really grow on trees. It's very much like a Jack Grealish, Ruben Diaz kind of situation as well, where it's like, if you take that player out, it's a whole different kind of team. Mm-hmm. It's a player that really brings out the most of everyone else. And even statistically too, he's got 18 goals, 11 assists this season in the Premier League. Granted, a lot of them were penalties, but he was basically automatic at a penalty spot, which is not too common as well. Occasionally, you got people who miss. Even like Lewandowski miss every once in a while. You got Sergio Aguero trying to Panenka and still missing. So for Bruno Fernandez, he always gets it. And maybe I jinxed him now since it's automatic. But I mean, that kind of player in itself, like, he really makes an impact. He takes the long shots and scores too. He can do anything out of nothing. And that's a player that really, when both Yash and I kind of look at him and we think, yeah, like, he's good. He definitely changes the whole team. He definitely is one of the best players in the Premier League right now, if not the best. He actually is the best. We gave him the award. So, I mean, like, that in itself was like, yeah, there's not even a question. He was not injured. He made no injuries.
It's crazy. Stamina is incredible. Like, his endurance, like, he can run for days.
Exactly. And then when you see the Manchester United team without him, when he has to get benched for, a Europa League match or for an FA Cup match, it's like, man, that's a whole different team. Like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
So, like, they always need him. And this is a player that I feel like will be a leader for that Manchester United team for a long time now. Mm-hmm. And I'm very jealous that Manchester United got him. Ever since the day y'all got him, I was like, man, That's a really good.
I wish Liverpool got him.
I was like, man, that's a really good one.
Yeah, even Tyler knew like since day one, he was like, yeah, this guy's going to be good.
I just like long shot or players that take long shots. And I was like, man, that's one of them. Yeah. And I didn't know he had all this in his locker too. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
It's like Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah. Literally on the same level. I feel like this season has shown that he can be on the same level as a Kevin De Bruyne in terms of being that good and that consistently good and being that impactful. There's very few players like that in the Premier League. And luckily for United fans like myself, Bruno is one of them. There's very few players of that ilk. Like you have a Van Dijk, a Bruno, a Kevin De Bruyne, a Harry Kane. Very, very, very few players in the Premier League that can have that impact, and Bruno is one of them for United. But man, that is our last award of our annual Premier Pod Awards. It was funny. We were talking about we should come up with like a name, like how the Office has like the Dundies, and like WWE's got like the Slammies and stuff. We'll come up with a name, but
the PPs.
Yeah. But yeah, that is I guess like that literally is the final award of the Premier Pod Awards, which is crazy because kind of looking back at it, this season 3, like this is literally the last episode of season 3, which is crazy because if you go back to season 1. Our Premier Pod Awards, we didn't even actually have a Google sheet. That was like when we were still writing on pieces of paper for our outline. So we still, to this day, don't know what our actual awards are for that show unless we go back and re-listen to the entire, I think it's literally episode 36. The title is Pep is Salty is the title. But yeah, it's been a crazy season 3. Like Tyler and I were talking that this season compared to season 1 and season 2, obviously season 2, because of COVID, we had to take a big break. But this season, apart from a couple weeks, we've consistently been going at it this entire season. So it's been a long, it's been a grind, but it's been fun, each week coming out here to record and sharing our thoughts about the Premier League and everything. And we're very thankful that, all of you have decided to come along in this journey and listen to us each week, just bantering about the Premier League and hearing our sadness like myself today about United losing out on the Europa League final. We do appreciate everyone that has followed us in this journey, from season 1, if you have, but obviously this current season, considering it's just been such a crazy, compact, just congested season. And I guess before we send it off, before we end on our final note, there is a big final going on this Saturday. It is the Champions League final. It is the final game of the European domestic club season, our club schedule before we head off to international Euros and such. It is Chelsea versus Manchester City in the Champions League final. Quick, I guess, score prediction as we always do. Oh, this is a tough one because I really don't want neither club to win. But if I had to pick, I'd rather Chelsea win than Man City win their first Champions League title because I won't hear the end of it. So I'll just go Chelsea winning. Oh, this game is probably going to be really boring. So I'm going to go. I think they're going to win in not a penalty shootout. I think they'll end up squeaking like a 2-1 victory out of this.
For this final as well, I don't want either team to get a Champions League title. That's why I'm like, man, I want to watch this. It's like, man, I know it's great for the Premier Pod because this is literally 2 Premier League teams, but it's like, man, both of our rivals. It's like seeing Alabama and Florida in the national championship as Georgia students. It's like, all right, no, this is disgusting. Or I guess, no, like usually you don't see Alabama, or Alabama's always in it. So I guess it'd be like South Carolina or something. I don't know. Yeah. But anyways, for this final, I'm going to be slightly opposite. I feel like I know less Man City fans as friends. I don't really know that many people that support Man City. Yeah. And we'll see which one of our friends becomes a bandwagon after this final. But I think right now also they have a little bit more heart going into it. They got Sergio Aguero, kind of his send-off. He's like, I want to make sure they get a Champions League before I leave. And this is it. Like literally it's against a very young Chelsea side that couldn't do it against Leicester, pooped the bed against Aston Villa, and were just kicked into 4th place because of Tottenham. Like they literally have not done anything by themselves successfully at the very end. They really have been really doing terribly at the very end.
They've been poor.
I feel like, they've been really poor compared to when Tuchel first came in. They had a lot of good form. Yeah. But right now they're not in great form. They don't look too confident. They don't really look like they have the right formula. While Man City in the meanwhile, they're like, all right, we're here to win it. And we got the players. We got some of the best players in the league now. So And it's not like potential, it's just like literally right now.
Yeah.
So I think Man City will win this. I think it'll be pretty close as well. I think it'll be, I kind of want to say a 1-0, but I feel like Man City's got a little bit more than that. Maybe 2-0. I'll go 2-0.
Oh, man. 2-0. Yeah, we were both predicting this game being a little bit boring because all English final, it doesn't set up to be a very entertaining game. But I'm hoping that, it's so weird saying I'm hoping. I think that Chelsea, I'll just say that I think Chelsea will win a 2-1 scrappy victory. And Tyler's going like a 2-0 City demolition of Chelsea on the biggest stage. So,
yeah. It won't be as beautiful as, the Liverpool Tottenham match where Liverpool beautifully won that game. It was one of the best finals of this millennium, but I think for either of these two teams, it'll be all right. It'll just be
It'll just be
we'll watch it, I guess.
Yeah, none of us will be cheering like, oh my gosh, yes.
It'll be straight neutral.
Yeah, be like,
or to the point where we just hate both teams. It's just like, all right, I guess.
Yeah,
we'll be neutral.
This is it. But yeah, those are our predictions for the Champions League final. But that kind of wraps up season 3, episode 119 for us. As we always say, if you're listening to this podcast on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, there is a rating function that if you want to leave a rating or review for us, that helps us out because it helps get this podcast out to more people. But as we always say, if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. Just taking the time to listen to us during this entire season has been more than enough. But if you want to share this podcast with any one of your friends that's interested in soccer, that is also very appreciative. And you can also give us a follow at The Premier Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Premier Pod, where you can find the video versions of this podcast if you like to see our faces and the jerseys we wear each episode. But other than that kind of wraps up season 3, episode 119 for us. Thank you once again, everyone, for following us during this entire journey of this Premier League season. We are definitely appreciative, and we can't wait to come back for season 4 of the return of the Premier Pod. So like we said before, thank you again for everyone for taking the time to listen to us each and every week. We appreciate it. And hopefully you guys enjoy this one. Thank you guys. Peace.